Hello and welcome back, future scientists. I'm Mr. K with Mississippi Public Broadcasting, and we've learned a lot over this unit. So what I wanted to do today is just focus on some review questions, some stuff you might see on your test coming up, and make sure we all know how to think about this the correct way so that when we get to that test day, everybody knocks it out of the park and makes the grade that they want. So teacher, I have an assignment on Canvas that has the same name as this, Lesson 9 Review. If you haven't yet, why don't you go ahead and get those passed out to students. Y'all take 10 or 15 minutes to work on them. I think it's about 15 questions, and then when y'all are ready for the answers and want a little bit of help reviewing them, come back to the video and unpause it, and I'll walk through these with y'all and kind of go over my reasoning on how to find the right answer on these, okay? So go ahead, pass those out. When you're ready, come back to me, unpause the video, and we'll knock this out together. All right, great. So now that y'all have had a chance to kind of look over those and review them together, let's see what y'all came up with. I know y'all probably knocked them out, but there might be one or two of y'all in the room that are a little bit confused on some of these. So let's review those together and see what everybody came up with. All right, so here's the first one. It says, Simon looks at an image of a slide and notices that all the chromosomes are lined up along the middle of the cell. He is likely looking at a cell that is in what? Well, there's really a key word I want to focus on here. It says middle of the cell, okay? These are all stages of mitosis, and there's one that where the chromosomes are lined up in the middle, we're always going to pick that answer. The answer for this one is metaphase, okay? So just remember, middle, metaphase, they both start with the letter M. If you see the chromosomes lined up in the middle, it's probably in metaphase, okay? So middle, meta, that's the best way to remember that. Okay, let's keep it going. Let's see what y'all came up with for this next one. So this says, which statement best describes chromosomes? So what I want you to do for this one, think about chromosomes and how they're different than just that regular chromatin that the DNA is mostly in the form of. So for this, the answer should be D. They consist of tightly coiled strands of DNA and proteins. Remember that DNA, most of the time you can't see it, okay? It's in a form called chromatin, and it's not big enough to see under a microscope. It's only when DNA gets coiled up a lot in the form of chromosomes that they are visible. So chromosomes are tightly wound DNA. It gets a lot thicker and it's a lot easier to see. Okay, let's keep it going. So this question says, what is the cell cycle? Again, the cell cycle, this is what we've been talking about this whole unit. It's got a lot of different phases and steps. Out of these four different options, which of those best summarizes what the cell cycle is? To me, I think it's this last one, letter D. It says the series of events that take place in a cell leading up to its division and duplication of its DNA to produce two daughter cells. Remember that that's our goal here. We're starting with one cell. We want to replicate and duplicate everything as perfectly as possible and then end with two identical daughter cells. And remember, daughter cells is just a fancy way of saying the new cells that we made. Okay, great work. So here's the next one. Which part of the cell cycle takes the longest? So the cell cycle has a couple of different steps. Which of those takes the longest to do? That is interphase. Interphase takes up the majority of a cell's life cycle, okay? What's confusing about this is that when people talk about this, they usually spend the most time talking about mitosis. So there's a misconception that that's the one that takes the longest, but actually mitosis is a very short part of the cell cycle. There's just a lot going on, so that's why it takes so long to review. But interphase, that's how a cell spends the majority of its life, and then right at the end of its life, when it's ready to divide, that's when it moves into mitosis, okay? Let's keep it going. This says, what phase is this cell in? So you're going to get some questions like this on the test. You're going to see a picture of a cell. You're going to have to tell me what part of the cell cycle it's in. What I really want to focus on here, look at the chromosomes, the red and the blue lines here. They're moving away from each other, right? So what phase of mitosis did I tell you the key word is away? That should be anaphase. Anaphase, away. They both start with the letter A. If the chromosomes look like they're moving apart or away from one another, we're going to want to go with anaphase for those. Okay, great job. Let's keep it going. So we got a couple of these, so let's practice this. So this says, what phase is this cell in? Okay, well, the key to answering this one is how many cells do you see? you're kind of starting to see two cells, right? So which of these different phases is dealing with seeing two? Well, that should be telophase. Telophase, two. They both start with the letter T. That's kind of the best way to remember that. So this is going to be one cell. This is going to be one cell. It's done every part of the cell cycle other than the cytokinesis. We just got to pinch that right down the middle. And while I have a big picture up, let me go ahead and talk about it. You see how this cell is kind of pinching in the middle? That's called the cleavage furrow. So this right here, that's the cleavage furrow. In cytokinesis, we're just going to continue pinching it down the middle until the two cells are totally separated. And that's a quick overview of cytokinesis. So let's look at this next one. What phase is this cell in? Okay, so look at that cell. Here are a couple things that I'm noticing about this. So the nucleus has dissolved. I can see the chromosomes. There are two centrioles, and there are spindle fibers that are spanning the cell. So that's kind of all the hints for this one. This is going to be prophase. And looking at this picture, this is probably late prophase. Okay, great work on that. Let's keep it going. So this says, what is the longest phase in mitosis? So a couple of questions ago, I asked you the longest phase of the cell cycle. Here I'm just asking you, what is the longest phase in mitosis? For this one, let's go with prophase. Remember that often we divide prophase into an early and a late prophase. It's so long, there's so many things that are going on. The early and the late prophase often don't look a whole lot like each other, so that's the longest one, and that's why we usually say an early and a late prophase, because of how many things are going on in it. Let's keep it going. In what phase does chromatin condense to form chromosomes? So remember, chromatin is that really long, relaxed DNA. It almost looks like spaghetti noodles. But when we're getting ready to divide, we need to take that chromatin and condense it into chromosomes because it makes it much easier to divide. So which of these stages is that happening in? Well, this is going to be prophase, okay? Here's a little hint that I give people sometimes. We know what's happening in anaphase and telophase, right? We know what's happening in metaphase and anaphase. In metaphase, they're in the middle, and anaphase, they're moving apart. So if you see something and you don't really know what it is, it's probably either prophase or telophase, and you just have to kind of pick which one it is. Telophase isn't up here, so just by process of elimination, we probably could have picked prophase for that one. Okay, let's keep it going. In what phase do the chromosomes get pulled apart into sister chromatid to opposite sides of the cell? So the key word here is apart. Which of these phases are the cells moving apart or away from each other? That's anaphase. Remember, anaphase, away. They both start with the letter A. When those chromosomes start to separate, that's anaphase of the cell cycle, okay? Let's keep it going. In what phase do the organelles disperse out into the daughter cells and the cell prepares for cytokinesis? Okay, so at this point we've done a lot of different things. We're getting ready to do cytokinesis. So what happens right before cytokinesis? That's the telophase, okay? So we're going to make sure that each cell has the organelles that they need to function, and then the last thing we'll do is pinch it the middle, and that's the cytokinesis. So I think telophase is the best answer for this one. Let's keep it going. What is the longest stage of the cell cycle called? So for this one, kind of similar to something we had earlier, what's the longest stage of the cell cycle? That's interphase. Remember, interphase is really long compared to everything else that's happening in the cell cycle. Okay? During which stage of the cell cycle does mitosis and cytokinesis occur? So remember, sometimes mitosis and cytokinesis are lumped together into one stage. Does anyone remember what that stage is from way at the beginning of the unit? Well, we call that the M phase sometime. And just think mitosis, that's kind of where the M's coming from. During the M phase, our main goal is cellular division. Okay, so mitosis and cytokinesis is dealing with that. Remember, mitosis is division of the nucleus, cytoplasm is division of the cytoplasm, and so that's how we separate those cells apart. Okay. During what phase of the cell cycle is DNA replicated? Okay, so look at your options here. We're going to synthesize DNA in one of them. Does anyone know what phase that is? Well, to me, I like to use the word synthesize because that's what S stands for in the S phase. So S phase, this is in between the two G phases. Our main job here is to replicate the DNA. This is the longest part of interphase. Remember that in the S phase, we have to make the DNA, and that's a very complicated process. We want to make sure that DNA is correct, because if we're mixing up our nucleotides, we can get a mutation. So S phase is when we're replicating or synthesizing new DNA. Okay, so let's look at this one. During what phase of the cell cycle does the cell prepare for mitosis? Okay, so for this, if you're not sure on this one, just think, what is the stage directly before mitosis? Think about the cell cycle. There's a lot of different steps. Think about where mitosis is. Which of these comes directly before mitosis? That's the G2 phase. And so during the G2 phase, what are we doing? We're getting ready for mitosis. This is when we're going to do things like we're going to make extra organelles, we're going to copy that centriole, we're getting ready to divide. And that's what the G2 phase is all about. Okay, y'all, thank you so much for following along. Y'all did a great job today. I hope those review questions were helpful. We've got some other practice stuff for y'all to do, so make sure to give that your best effort, and I hope everybody has a great day.